panel now is going to be chaired by David Telford, who you've just seen, and also Tristan is joining us from FCDO. So I'll hand over to you to introduce the panel.
Thanks, Joanna. First of all, I'd just like to thank all the presentations in the last session, but today in general, they were excellent, really. We couldn't have asked for more. I'd like to thank all the audience for joining today as well. It's been great to see all the comments in the chat, but also for your contribution to the Mentimeter session there. What we're going to do now is we're going to have the last panel discussion. We're going to use the findings from the Mentimeter, but also all the presentations today to inform the discussion. First of all, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Tristan, who's on the screen now. Tristan is the Science, Technology and Innovation Advisor for East Africa, working for the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, which is part of the UK government. And Tristan's been working with people interested in insect protein in East Africa. So he's got very relevant knowledge to today. I'd like to introduce the panel as well. We've got 4 panel members. We've got Andrea Jagodic from Biosystems, who you've heard of presentation today already. Betty Kibaara from the Rockefeller Foundation, who also gave a great talk. Chrys Tanga from the International Centre for Insect Physiology and Ecology, or icipe. And lastly, Valerie Schuster from Livalta, who also you heard present this morning. So what we're going to do with the panel discussion is, just as with the previous panels, we're going to pose one question to one panel member initially, then we'll open it up to other members of the panel for comments as well. So I'd just like to start by asking Andrea a question to start with. So we've heard a lot about the different challenges the sector faces, and in the presentations and in the Mentimeter there, I'd just like to ask you, Andrea, what approaches would you think can be used to tackle some of these challenges? And also, who do you think needs to intervene to tackle some of these challenges? What people working in the area, be it government, finance, industry, academia, et cetera, et cetera. So over to you, Andrea. So,
I mean, I think kind of we have touched upon this quite a lot in the previous discussions during this workshop. I think it was Shibona that mentioned, public-private partnerships, and that ties into the whole research and development collaboration. And everyone has mentioned this. Miha has also mentioned some of the challenges the industry is facing in terms of needing to protect their intellectual property while the companies are going through their fundraising rounds, and yet there is still a lot of scope to collaborate between academia and between the industry, and that should definitely be supported by government initiatives, both in the UK and across Africa. At the same time, the work that, for example, Betty is doing or icipe are doing on such a wide range of issues, from regulations to training farmers, to training potential entrepreneurs, to all the great work that Betty is doing on aggregation and separation of waste that she can touch upon a little bit later as well. To we've also seen, especially in Africa, access to funding, and that should be kind of access to funding and regulations is something that we're going to look at government for support to create that enabling environment for the industry to grow. So I think that summarizes kind of the key areas, unless Betty or Dr. Tanga have a little bit more to say.
Maybe I can just chime in. And I think for me, what I find very interesting is that from the Kenyan perspective, the demand for protein is actually very high. When we started this work, we started by engaging with the private sector. And I remember in the first meeting which we had with them, they asked, okay, can I get 40 metric tons a month? And by that time, I mean, the production levels were very low. Just to mention that first, the issue of, making sure that we're able to meet demand. There are many things that we need to do. One of the things that we need to do is what I may have highlighted on my presentation is the drying. I mean, not much is talked about the drying, but there's a lot of post-harvest loss that also takes place because you need to dry the insect larvae to, I think, 27%. And when you look at Kenya, for example, we have very, very few cases where we have dryers in place. And we see two models. We see the community dryers. This is something we'll be testing with icipe. And we also see a commercial model in future where, that becomes a core business for a company that decides to go into drying. I also do see we really need, even though we are saying that Africa, we have a lot of waste. I think the presenter from Synergy did give us some interesting numbers, which are almost like 8 million metric tons of waste a year from Kenya. But that waste belongs to someone. So we must think about business model for sourcing the organic waste. And that's why we are also having another project around the smart markets for Africa, where we are looking at, can we also redesign the way that the waste is managed? And then I would say a final one from me, as we had said in the earlier presentation, through the icipe Rockefeller Foundation partnership, we have tested many different models. I'll not go into all that, including a purely vertically integrated model, the smallholder farmer model, the waste generator model. I do believe one of the insectary representative is on this call. They also are doing some interesting work. And then we have the feed miller driven model. We have some millers who are now deciding, okay, instead of me sourcing my pelagic fish from Western Kenya, why can't I just go into BSF production? So I think among all the models that we've talked about, I do think one of the approaches would be the outgrower model. For us, it really stands out because not everyone needs to go into all the science of production and breeding. And we see an outgrower model has worked very, very well in horticulture in Africa. And we look at a model where a company maybe produces about 70% of their needs, and then about 30% of them is sourced by the smallholder farmers. And this, we are looking at a case where you can have 5-day-old larvae. You buy it from the company, and the farmers would go and without making too much investment. In fact, the report that we'll be releasing soon shows you the farmer only needs $1,200 to be able to plug into the outgrower model. So I think that's really what we see that could really work very well. And I know NutriEnter, who are also on this call, are already piloting something like that. And then to the next question that you asked, that who needs to intervene? I would say it's not one person, it's actually all players. The donors, I know, if you look at the presentation that was done by icipe, I mean, the donors, there are very many, but they're not going to be there forever. So the donors are there to provide catalytic capital. We also have the Bureau of Standards from, is going to be important, the millers and the research institutions. So it has to be a consortium of partners. It cannot just be one person who needs to intervene. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Betty, and thanks, Andrea, before that. Chrys, would you like to add anything, or would you like us to move on? I think Chrys might have lost his
thank you so much.
Sorry, thanks, Chrys.
Betty is right. Yeah, thank you so much. Betty, Andrea's all right. And but one key thing that we keep in mind is not forgetting the consumer perspective. Consumer awareness is very critical. We need to sensitize a lot more people about this technology. And we see a lot of uptake in Kenya because of the intensive dissemination process. And we also need to enhance the ICT technology to be able to reach out to more people within the space. Again, we should not forget research, and research. As I said, there's a lot of issues with respect to processing of this insect. A lot of farmers are producing insect that are of really poor quality. Some of them use poor dryers. They last for a longer time to get dry. It means the product end up getting spoiled already. The smell is so intensive that even it can't meet the market price. So we need to look at processing in terms of safety and look at the processing in terms of the quality of a product that gets into the market. Again, we have other aspects that we are thinking of looking at new strains of black soldier fly that can easily be used to engineer a wide variety of waste. For example, looking at maybe geographical populations and trying to bring them together and see if we can better increase the efficiency of these flies in breaking down various waste streams. Because we have other stubborn waste like those are highly rich in lignocellulose material that the insect cannot break down, but these are actually holding a lot of nutrients, and that can also be used. That can also be used for rearing black soldier fly to be able to support the waste that is available for. Then the other component which Andrea also mentioned is the fact that the waste is in abundance, but then consolidating this waste is also a challenge. So we need to start looking at partnership with other institutions to see how there could be a joint process of how to get these waste streams really available for the producers, and also how can the different actors benefit from this whole area. And so for those who have to be involved, Betty rightly put it, all actors have to be involved: the government, policymakers, the farmers, the feed millers. Everybody has to put hands on deck to make sure that this technology actually picks up and leaving behind no gaps. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrys. That's great, and really comprehensive answers there, and lots of salient points raised. So I'll move on to Tristan for the next question.
Thanks, David. So this is a question to Betty, but a great presentation, Betty. I found it really interesting. I'm just thinking about some of the opportunities which came out of the Mentimeter, so specifically around things like UK expertise in breeding and genetics, research partnerships, trades, new insect varieties, and waste valorization. I mean, where do you think, well, how can we best capitalize on these opportunities as a community? Over to you, Betty.
Yeah, I think though that's very good questions. And in my view is that, as I did mention in my presentation, I think Africa is ready for investment. And when I look at the number of companies that are coming up, the SMEs in particular, in the last, I would say like 2 years, it's just been amazing. So, and most recently we did interview some of them. They have business plans in place, they're ready for investment. So for me, what I just see is that we just need to look at these opportunities for partnership. And I think what we are doing today is a good testament that this can be done. We are making that connection between the investors and between the SMEs in Africa. So I would say that when you look at the levels of investment, and I only wish this report was officially out, with an investment of about 2 million, you're able to put up a processing unit that can do about 480 metric tons in a year. So of course, if you multiply that by 2, then you're almost getting to 1,000 or so metric tons a year. So we don't see, like in Africa, we require like the very, very many millions of dollars I see that have already gone to, for example, companies in Europe. We do think because our cost of production are low, the cost of labor is also low, that we can really make investment, which is not going to really cost as much. And we also know that, like from this meeting I had about some modular systems, like Beta Origin presentation was quite interesting. I think that's what we are looking for in Africa, where we can also begin to look at exchanging and bringing some of those technologies to Africa. But of course, noting that, we also need to customize them for our Africa setting. But there is really a need for opportunities. And I know, for example, maybe 3 or 4 companies right now are already beginning to connect with investors. And we do believe that that's how we could be able to plug in and capitalize on those opportunities.
Brilliant, thank you, Betty. Does anyone else have any comments on how we can capitalize on those opportunities before we move on to the next question? No?
I think that was a really comprehensive answer, yeah, from Betty.
Excellent. Yes, David, back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tristan. Thanks, Betty. I'll direct this question to Chrys. So we've heard a lot about these different challenges and opportunities today, but I think I'd really like to get a perspective on how you think these challenges and opportunities are going to evolve over the coming decades. As it's been mentioned today, it's quite a novel and quite a young industry sector compared to a lot of others. So just that's the question really, Chrys. How do you think these challenges and opportunities are going to evolve over the coming decade?
Okay, on my side, what I think is that over the coming years, there's going to be a lot more of awareness that's going to be created among the different actors, and this will go a long way to increase the uptake of the technology. Secondly, there's also going to be increased access of this insect-based protein into the market as we continue to build up SMEs and other large-scale producers to produce the amount of protein that the market is actually demanding. Because right now, as Betty rightly put it, a lot of feed millers are willing to take up this insect protein at a reasonable cost, but then the volume is completely missing. So given that this industry is still at its infancy, we think that as time goes on, this whole process is going to change. Also, I see a very vast employment generation opportunity here if we have to look at the insect in a holistic package, looking at the one health perspective. What role can this insect play in the animal sector? What role can this insect play in the crop production sector? What role can this insect play in terms of human health? And what role can this insect play in terms of environmental implications? So, and we have actually carried out a study that was published in 2020. If we are able just to adopt between 5 to 50% of the insect protein into the market, then we'll be taking over close to 3 million people out of poverty and replacing the fish meal or soya beans in animal protein is not only cutting down on the cost, but we are removing the fish, the soya beans, and the maize that would have ended up into the animal feed sector and taking it back to the human food value chain that could be able to feed close to 3 million people every year. Then we have the aspect of this sector being able to remove so much transforming the waste into frass fertilizer. Then we're removing 18 million tons of waste, and 30% of this will be frass fertilizer. That means we are going to produce millions of tons of fertilizer, which will reduce importation of fertilizer and also importation of animal feed. So, and then in the level of job employment, millions of jobs will be created. Just at 50%, we can have about 252,000 jobs every year, based on the economic benefits. And this study was actually done for Kenya alone. So I think I see a lot of massive opportunity as the sector continues to grow, both in Africa and as well as in Europe or in UK. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks, Chrys, and really highlighting the circular economy benefits there. Yeah, I'll just open the question up to Andrea and Betty as well, if there's anything to add.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to just add a couple of points. So when I look at the way, for example, African governments are setting up industrial parks, I think a part of me, when I'm looking at, your question on what opportunities are going to evolve in the coming decades, my visionary eyes, I look at waste management parks, where the country, for example, the government here in Kenya, we have a lot of land. Why not set up the waste management units and also set up the BSF production within? So I think for me, that will really help to solve the issue of where you're sourcing the substrate from and the logistics involved. So that's one. I also see in future, right now, we're talking about BSF, the larvae, but as we go in the next coming decades, I see us being able to make advancement in product development, the kiting, the oil, the packaging of frass. We did see a very good example from Synergy of how they really package it, and it looks very nice. So right now, many of the SMEs who are selling the frass is just sold like cow manure, not really well packaged so that we can be able to even reach the high-end farmers. And then I also see right now what we have in most cases, we have companies that are doing full value chain integration. But I think I see in future where we look at some companies that are going to focus on tech provision, others will do the breeding, others will do value addition and processing. So I think I think there's going to be a lot of specialization in future. And then in terms of our curriculum, I also see a future where I have an option. If I'm doing agricultural economics, I can do agricultural economics and also do economics of insects. So I think where we also begin to build in the role of insects in transforming food system, even within our curriculum, whether it's at the lower grades or even the university. So a lot of opportunities that still remain untapped.
Brilliant, thanks, Betty. That's perfect. Oh, sorry, Andrea. Yeah, over to you.
Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit, but yeah, I would agree. I think the highlight here is that the market is there, the demand is huge and growing due to all the externalities we've mentioned through various presentations today. And so while the industry in Africa especially is potentially still finding its feet a little bit when it comes to figuring out the right business models to do it, it is the future and is coming. It's already profitable, unlike Western markets, to rear the black soldier fly and other insects for feed applications. And I think one key other thing that we might focus on in the future is, now that we figured out how to do this, what are the kind of other like byproducts and other markets and uses that we're going to get out of this? Looking from, we've mentioned lots of things today, from animal health, productivity, from uses, for example, just chitin and the huge potential that has in pharmaceutical or cosmetic industries. So I think we're going to turn our focus, and again, specialize and turn our focus to some of the other markets that we haven't really even had a chance to look at quite yet.
Brilliant, thanks, Andrea. Yeah, really interesting points there. And like you said, it's again, with it being such a novel industry, we're just scratching the surface in terms of the opportunities, I think. Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks, Betty. Back to you, Tristan.
Yes, I've got one more question to Betty, actually. So, I mean, I think this is kind of...
Yeah, I think also,
sorry, Chrys.
Go ahead, Chrys. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I think one aspect we should also, thank you so much. I think one aspect we should also keep in mind is that as the years goes by, we are going to also find a lot of countries developing the standards that are required. And at one point, we have to start thinking of to harmonize these standards across the continents, and to make sure that there's a free markets for the producers as well as the various actors within the value chain. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chrys. Again, another really key point. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Back to you, Tristan.
Brilliant, thank you. So, Betty, so I think this has already been answered a little bit, but just if we're thinking about insect farming happening at scale, comparable to sort of fish meal or even soy, where does the drive need to come from? So is it a case of push of products and ideas and research coming from the industry, or is it more around pull, where sort of consumers and customers are indicating what their needs and standards? And I think, as Chrys has alluded to at numerous points, around changing that consumer perception.
So I'm losing you a little bit. Was that question directed to me?
Yes, sorry, yes, it's directed to you.
Perfect. Yeah, this is a very good question. And where does the drive need to come from? As the Rockefeller Foundation, we do believe that the private sector plays a very important role. And in this case, and I did say this at the beginning, when we started our partnership with icipe, we started by looking at the feed millers. We brought them to one room. Dr. Tanga sat on one side, he presented the science. I sat on one side and I moderated, and we agreed that, you know, they saw that there was a need. So I think the demand needs to come, I mean, the feed millers, we want to make sure that we are not supply driven, we are demand driven. And right now we cannot even meet the demand. I can tell you, for example, there is one of the largest company in Kenya that wants 50 metric tons. I still want to see whether there is more than 2 of the SMEs right now who can meet that. So the supply is where we really have the biggest problem. So we have to be demand driven, and the demand needs to come from the users or the consumers of this work. And then we can work backwards and say, if X company needs 50 metric tons, how then do we link the demand for the insect-based feed and the supplier? And in this case, the suppliers being SMEs. But now for SMEs to also deliver, there are also a lot of things that needs to be done, including financing, including the science that we talked about. And then who also needs to drive this? I do think the role of science is very important. And I'm not saying that's because Tanga is on the call, but if you think about it, when you get sick, you go and see a doctor. When the cow is sick, you go and see a vet. But I'm not sure right now if an SME is having, especially what they call the colony collapse, all of a sudden, you know, you stop, the productivity comes low, reduces, and the colony collapses. where is the doctor for the IVF? So I do believe that we need some specialized organization, whether these are research organizations like icipe, who are able to be that doctor who is able to do the research, but at the same time is able to identify challenges. And then the other person who needs to drive this is government. And I can tell you, for example, in Kenya, we've had the president of Kenya has really been interested in this work, and he has visited some of the projects in Kenya. And when he visited the project, one of the things he shared with me was he really wanted to see, can we use the opportunities for IVF to create jobs for the youth? You know, in Africa, we have youth badge is a big problem. And I think what I also like about it is that you know, if you look at SMEs who are in the sector right now, a great number of them are actually women. So I think the government has a role to play, but not just playing the role of just wanting to be there, but there are also many things that they can be able to do. For example, the tax credit, the VAT on equipment and machineries for which have been imported for BSF. And we know, for example, the government of Rwanda, it has a very, very nice strategy on, you know, opening themselves to investment, and they are giving some even tax moratorium. And I know also in Kenya, for example, the government of Kenya has, through the Kenya Bureau of Standard, has also come up with protocols for production and processing of BSF. So I think it's a combination of many people need to do something. The development partners also need to be on the driver's seat. We have demonstrated that, and so is IDRC and other partners that have worked with the icipe. So yeah, many drivers. This, I think, is a vehicle with many drivers, but I think the most important one is the market.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Betty. And it's really great to hear about jobs and that gender mention as well. In the interest of time, we're going to put it back to David so in case we get questions from the audience. Over.
Yeah, great, thanks, Tristan. Yeah, so we've had some questions from the audience. I think I'll take one here, which is from William Leshen. And he says, aside from large-scale commercial startups in Europe, Africa, and Asia, do the panel believe that there are yet any financially viable business models for small or mid-scale black soldier fly production and associated value chains for smallholders in Africa? I'll maybe start off with you for that one, Andrea. Is that okay?
I think a couple of us have mentioned through this discussion and through our presentations that I think African producers are at the moment looking at the more decentralized business models that are relying on the outgrower models, all of the smallholder farmers who are growing black soldier fly larvae, and how we can aggregate that, post-process the larvae, and just kind of aggregate the supply, because as we've just mentioned now, there is a huge demand and we're not meeting that supply. And there is a lot of farmers who are already, I mean, I think Dr. Tanga personally trained thousands who are already rearing the black soldier fly. So there's definitely room for decentralized models. And that also makes it easier to access waste, which is a big plus of that model as well. So that's my opinion. I think Betty would probably agree.
You're just on mute now, Betty, yeah.
It's okay. Yeah, so I totally agree with you, and I think a decentralized model is what is going to work for Africa. I actually call it the Uber model is what is going to work. If you think about it, because if you look at the levels of investment, unfortunately I don't have all the figures, but if you look at the investments you need to make, for example, when you're investing in Europe and US, it's quite high. And we do believe because of the issue of the wastes and the need for us to also support emerging SMEs. We've also said that SMEs are the hidden middle, and they are the ones who are driving the food systems in Africa. It doesn't matter in which sector. Even if you look, for example, at the tea sector, we are very productive, and we are market leader in tea. but who are producing? They are the small holder farmers. We also know there's a role that can be played by the large players, but I think given the realities of Africa, a decentralized model, and of course, which makes the business sense. It's not just a very tiny pilot, but something which is sizable enough. But I do think that what I would call the Uber model is what may work best in Africa.
Brilliant, thanks, Betty.
Sorry, just to add to that, I mean, black soldier fly farmers, even smallholder farmers are already buying larvae and paying to dry and post-process larvae. So this is already just kind of organically happening and creating kind of a hub and spoke model in the market.
Thanks, Andrea. And Chrys, do you want to comment as well?
Yeah, I think he's right. The decentralized model is actually it's an approach that we have adopted a long time ago. If you look at the presentation from Synergy, we've informed them that it's localized central within the Nairobi city. They are already facing challenges with the waste, given that so many actors and SMEs are developing within the sector. So you find that they've moved down to the coastal region. That is decentralizing. We have Babu has moved from Tanzania. They're now in Kilifi. They are decentralizing. And the concept of all our projects has been that we have to construct learning site or demonstration sites in different target locations. For example, Rockefeller is in Kiambu. We have IGRC, ECR project, World Road, sponsor projects. There are about 8 different counties, and all these counties have demonstration sites, which allows other farmers to be able to move to those sites for training and for actually picking up this technology, and has worked a lot. Also, we have another system whereby we do incubation periods of about 5 days, and this allows the country to request or book for training, and we train them. So you find that farmers are coming from so many different areas of Kenya, and that has been translated in Uganda, and we are moving that also to Rwanda. So I think it is actually the best roadmap to approach if we have to make sure that this is a more successful venture. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrys. So that's we're just about to finish this session, I think, because we've only got 2 minutes left, so it's probably better to stop there. So I'd just like to thank all the panelists again. That was really interesting discussion there, and we'll try and capture some of that in the write-up after the event. And thanks to Tristan as well. And I'm just going to hand back to Joanna now, who's just going to wrap up the event. Thanks again, everyone. Cheers.